Tharizdun, lord of 7 hells, wherein the single serpent dwells, with volumes drawn from pit to pit, through fire and darkness infinite. Tharizdun, son of nether skies, thine ancient evil never dies, for aye thy sombre fulgurs flame on sunken worlds that have no name. Man's heart enthrones thee, still supreme, though the false sorcerers blaspheme.
Back in the late 1960s, Rob Kuntz lived only a few blocks away from Gary Gygax. They met in 1968 and collaborated on many aspects of the early form of Dungeons & Dragons. Rob Kuntz created an evil god named Tharizdun. Some think this god was inspired by Tharizdun, a great old one and god of evil and void created by Clark Ashton Smith in H.P. Lovecraft's style back in the early 1930s. Tharizdun appeared in early adventure modules and was later adapted by Gary into the mad god Tharizdun, who again features in a few early adventures and was mentioned in some novels. But he was and has always been a lost god, with no concrete details and a lot of conflicting accounts about him. Many theories exist about Tharizdun, but he is a god that has been a part of Dungeons & Dragons from the very beginning, so it's fitting that he forms an integral part of the cosmology of the D&D multiverse. But so little has been written about him, intentionally, no doubt. Like the Lady of Pain or the true origin of Asmodeus, some mysteries in D&D lore are better left unanswered. Or in the case of Asmodeus, there is a different version for every edition of the game. It's kind of a tradition for him now. Over the years, I've doggedly chased down every little scrap of lore detailing D&D cosmology and the deep secrets of the origin and nature of this fictional multiverse. We have had a good taste of it this month with my videos on the Mindflayers. Now it's time to really get into it. These are the Mad God's forbidden secrets, the Abyss's purpose, its possible cure. These are the secrets of the primordial serpents and the dread god Vecna. This is the knowledge that even the gods fear. So, my friend, grab yourself a tasty beverage. We're about to get deeply nerdy. This video is not all about Tharizdun. There is a bit of context to assemble before we get to his arrival on the cosmic scene. And first, a disclaimer of sorts. This is all optional. It's also an area of D&D that, as I mentioned, has purposefully very patchy and conflicting lore, where any exists at all. So for the more pedantic gamers, let me put it this way. If not me, then who the hell else are you going to get this information from? The original game designers were never going to tell you this stuff. They never bothered to fill in the blanks because they didn't see any need to. As far as early D&D role-playing games were concerned, if your character was stupid enough to decipher the ancient profane runes in the temple of a chained and forgotten god of pure evil, you have fun role-playing a babbling, insane character for a little bit while you roll up a new player character, and the old player character becomes a new non-player character under the Dungeon Master's control, probably destined for a very short and nasty existence before they get eaten by something unmentionable, or turned into something unmentionable in the case of Vecna showing up. And for the gamers, that is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But this is a video for scholars and storytellers, not just gamers. The information itself is entertaining enough. And damn it, if I want to know this stuff, then other people do too. So if nobody else is going to slap it all on the dungeon wall and connect all the parts with red string, I will. I have. And here it is. As we covered in the video on Mindflayer gods, the current state of the multiverse is undoubtedly different from how it started. It has suffered a catastrophic disruption. Initially, there were the positive and negative membranes and the zone between them, where primal energy flowed from one to the other. This is because all prime material universes are essentially black holes with a direction of gravity functioning as the temporal flow. But that's more a debate for physics experts. For D&D nerds, this zone is comprised of the elemental chaos and the ethereal expanse. At the border of the positive membrane, turbulent currents would occasionally kick raw matter back into the positive plane where it was supercharged with its maximum potential and exploded back into the flow. This roiling zone was the birthplace of the first primordial beings, and within them, potential energy became crystallized into things called thought and consciousness and dreams. These were the Great Old Ones. They were not born of any evolutionary process. They don't make any biological sense. At this stage, there were no worlds for life to form on anyway. The universe was a hot mass of chaos, and we can visit a preserved snapshot of this when we go to the Far Realm. Some millions of years later, when the timeline became more established, this became the plane of limbo. You see, some of the other planes of existence in D&D are not just physical locations, they are also distant eras of history or memory, which is why you might catch me sometimes calling the negative energy plane the ultimate future or the end of time in the D&D cosmos. It's the location of the singularity at the heart of the black hole. This is why in the negative energy plane, the negative energy can actually condense into solid physical substance. The entire sum of all energy is very gradually drawn together over a period of time that makes the previous states of the multiverse seem like a blip on the timescale. The forces drawing matter together in our own reality are incredibly powerful and far-reaching, far more so than most people realize. And eventually the universe contracts just as it once expanded. When it hits a critical density, it explodes outward again. Tharizdun, so far as we know, was not one of those original Great Old Ones. He came about much, much later when the astral plane was created, and from that, all the outer aligned planes and the thousands of subplanes created by the powers of those places sprang into being. What sets Tharizdun well apart from the others is that I think he was the god that tried to ascend to something more significant, and in doing so, fully understood the reality was broken and was driven to what all other powers considered to be pure insanity. I also suspect that the Mindflayers, the epic temporal bootstrappers called the Illithids, have finally figured out precisely what Tharizdun has become and are now obsessed with completing his transformation into an entity called Thoon. But more on that later. Again, this is all speculative and makes for a really good thread of cosmic horror lore that you can drip feed to players at your table who love this sort of deep cosmic forbidden knowledge stuff. So, let's recap what I said about the mishap that created the astral plane in the video on Mindflayer gods. The Great Old Ones popped into being. For the most powerful among them, there was no clearly defined separation between thought, dream, and reality. In the pure chaos in the early era of the multiverse, every thought was liable to manifest as things. This is what the Far Realms are a snapshot of. The Far Realm is the memories of the Great Old Ones of this era. Reality was supermorphic, which is why mutation and psychic power are so strongly associated with the Far Realm. The Old Ones, the very powerful ones, who existed in higher dimensional states, which include moving through time just like we walk from one side of the room to the other or flip around in a choose-your-own-adventure style book, is always present for them, which is one reason other beings are driven insane whenever they try to communicate with the Great Old Ones. Keep that in mind, it's kind of essential later. In the heart of the prime material plane, the Spellweavers emerged as unparalleled paragons among mortals, resembling the grandeur of Netheral's empire on planet Toril eons later. Their civilization was marked by towering crystal monoliths that channeled magical energy, shaping entire worlds under their dominion. This epoch is revered as the Time of Nodes. Each node, a Spellweaver colony, showcased a magnificent pentagonal pyramid made of stone and steel standing over 500 feet tall. At its zenith rested a colossal crystal that emanated a profound blue glow. Encircling the main structure were smaller pyramids housing portals that interconnected the vastness of the prime material plane, much like celestial gateways. Spellweavers were humanoid, distinguished by their 6 arms that allowed them to cast multifaceted spells. Their smooth, silvery-toned skin complemented their large, dark eyes devoid of mouth and nose. They communicated using telepathy. Often shrouded in mystery, their movements were purposeful and their demeanour enigmatic. Spellweavers were connoisseurs of arcane knowledge, harnessing unique techniques. They favoured spells that intertwined multiple magical strands, creating intricate and potent effects. Their language, filled with intricate symbols, resonated with arcane power. Their artifacts and relics often bore inscriptions in this language and were artful amalgamations of mysticism and craftsmanship. Boldly, the Spellweavers sought to elevate their entire race to godhood, to intertwine their mortal existence with the dream realm. psychometrically etched a code of reversion into numerous gemstones as a contingency. This safeguard was designed to rewind reality to the time of nodes, letting them reattempt their grand ritual, the Great Disjunction. While the name might seem peculiar, the outcome was even more unexpected. The ritual inadvertently birthed the astral plane, breaching the barriers between the dream and the ethereal plane. Nightmarish visions from dormant old ones seeped through, crafting the tumultuous far realm. Subsequently, the beliefs and myths of all sentient beings coalesced into the outer, upper, and lower planes of existence. In an enigmatic twist, these changes echoed backward in time. Suddenly, races believed in deities who had, from the Spellweaver's perspective, not existed just moments prior. Tragically, the Great Disjunction's aftermath led to the node's cataclysmic detonation, annihilating almost all Spellweavers. A few, preserved in magical stasis, endured. Among them was Jurgle, who awoke amidst the chaos, touched with a hint of divinity. Other Spellweavers may also have been hiding in plain sight to this day. Some of the most mysterious powers could have their origins in this event. Despite their efforts, the remnants of the Spellweaver race had yet to reunite all inscribed gemstones. Doing so would demand the liberation of Tharizdun from his crystalline incarceration, which alarmingly integrates many of these crucial gemstones, 333 to be precise, and they are scattered across the multiverse. Or at least, I very much hope they are. The Spellweavers, after the cataclysmic disjunction, scattered an array of obelisks across the multiverse as the chaotic era known as the Dawn War unfurled. Nascent gods who were birthed from the myriad of thoughts, beliefs, and emotions of mortals that swirled into the astral plane's mists. A few pioneering deities managed to barricade the insidious thoughts of the great old ones using a lattice made from the essence of the goddess Lakal. This divine construct halted much of the psionic bleed over into the primaterial plane. The D&D multiverse hence teems with an unusual degree of morphic instability, explaining the ease of harnessing magic without relying heavily on powerful crystals, as was the Spellweaver's custom. The Spellweaver obelisks played a crucial role for the early gods and primordials, chiefly Tharizdun, in ensuring the stability of the astral plane. Harnessing his divine authority over voids, he established temporal zones by crafting planar barriers. This dominion allowed him to generate planes within the ethereal realms and divide the elemental planes, ultimately sealing off the tumultuous plane of limbo. Alas, Tharizdun's ambitions were not without ramifications. His endeavours to transition to higher dimensions and traverse alternate realities met with resistance from the vortex of the Old Ones, leading to his inevitable downfall. During this period, Tharizdun spawned the astral dreadnoughts and possibly, though conjecturally, the enigmatic beholders. Intriguingly, the transformational power Vecna wields to morph victims into Nothics resembles Tharizdun's power. Vecna's solitary eye might not just be an aftermath of an assassination attempt, but could have more profound, concealed ties. Tharizdun's symbolic representations, a spiral and an inverted ziggurat, mirror his entropic powers and the flow of time. Gygax, the creator, visualized the spiral as a radiant black sun, while the ziggurat symbolized the temporal bounds set by those who restrained Tharizdun. In 4th edition lore, Tharizdun is depicted as the malevolent creator of the Abyss and its residing demons, having tainted a fragment of the elemental chaos with sheer evil. His infamy and danger led to an unanimous decision among other deities to imprison him. To many, his identity remains veiled, known only as the Chained God or the Elder Elemental Eye. Tharizdun's ambition to forge a power crystal infused with pure evil to breach the Old One's vortex backfired catastrophically. Instead, it shattered dimensional boundaries, unleashing the Oberith entities and causing astral chaos. The Shard, too perilous to remain close to malleable mortal minds, was thrust into the elemental planes, spawning the Abyss that metastasized swiftly. Though it might appear that Tharizdun aimed for multiversal stability, his true nature, one of malevolence and decay, is indisputable. He perceived the multiverse as flawed and yearned for its complete domination. Tharizdun's confinement is within a vast crystalline structure in the ethereal plane's depths. The boundary is not designed to impede his escape, but to bind him from the external world's truths. In the Abyssal Plague series, his prison is unveiled as a desolated universe consumed by the Void Harrow, an abyss-like entity. Tharizdun's punishment is poetic. Trapped in a realm resembling the devastation he desired, he endlessly crafts escape plans he can never actualize. While one might interpret Tharizdun's actions as hinting at heroism, make no mistake. He embodies pure malevolence. Early in his existence, Tharizdun discerned that the multiverse that birthed him was far from perfect. He viewed it as a catastrophic aberration, likened to a gangrenous limb severed to preserve the whole. This universe, shunned by the Great Old Ones, seemed like a tragic oversight to him. Thus, he wondered, why shouldn't he reign over this flawed creation, moulding it into a realm of sheer wickedness and endless decay? And he nearly realized this dark vision. For the time being, however, he remains shackled. And now, to tie it all together for you. In the vast expanse of the multiverse, the stellar dragons glide silently through the void, their bodies shimmering with countless gems of knowledge reflecting the void space in the phlogiston. These gems aren't just adornments, but repositories of knowledge and power, holding the very secrets of the cosmos. Among these dragons, the Mikado stands above all, his crystalline horn glowing with pure truth. The Mindflayers, with their insatiable thirst for knowledge and power, are naturally drawn to these majestic creatures. Their cult, worshipping the future entity Thoon, knows of a prophecy. If they can harness the pure truth from the horn of the Mikado and the gems inside these dragons, and encase Tharizdun's shard of ultimate evil within it, they would gain unparalleled power and favour from their god. This would solidify their dominion over all realms and bring their vision of a future with Thoon closer to reality. For centuries, the Mindflayers have been devising ways to navigate the vastness of space, seeking out the stellar dragons. Their encounters with these beings have often resulted in brutal confrontations, with the Mindflayers relentlessly attempting to harvest the gems embedded within the dragon's scales. These skirmishes have given rise to legends of cosmic battles where flashes of arcane magic and psionic energy illuminate the void. As the Thoon cultists grew in power, their primary objective became clear: locate and defeat the Mikado, then harvest his species. With this, they could neutralize Tharizdun's malevolent shard, turning its immense power into a tool to reshape the multiverse in their vision. However, the Stellar Dragons, having seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations and knowing the underpinnings of the multiverse, were not unprepared. Forming alliances with other celestial entities and using their vast knowledge, they fortified their defenses and strategized against the impending Mindflayer onslaught. Could the Githyanki, with their alliance with Red Dragons, be a vital part of this alliance? The Stellar Dragons are known to share incredible secrets of arcane knowledge with those who seek them out and share cosmic information with them. One rumour is that the Greyhawk wizard Bigby learned his interposing hand and grasping hand spells from the Stellar Dragon in exchange for a juicy tidbit of information. That's according to the Stellar Dragons, that is, although some claim that the dragons only started using those spells after Bigby invented them, but who's going to argue with a Stellar Dragon? The Githyanki travel widely across the multiverse in their relentless quest to exterminate the Mindflayers once and for all, so naturally they would have loads of secrets to share with the Stellar Dragons. As an underpinning story arc for cosmic doom and the secret war for reality itself, for including adventures that are remarkably similar to the Avengers Infinity Stones saga, for the adventurer who loves a bit of eldritch horror, madness and that H.P. Lovecraft style, this lore is what it's all about. For those rare individuals who play the entire game of Dungeons & Dragons with the immortals, as Frank Mentzer perhaps intended, this is the sort of ultra high level play that can accommodate such epic levels of power. A plot that can involve gods, primordials, war between planes of existence, plunging into the very heart of the abyss one session only to be storming the peak of Celestia soon after. An adventure where Asmodeus and Vecna are reoccurring villains you can actually contend with. This is my playground, and there, my friend, we have it. You now know as much as I know, and I leave the rest up to you. Once more, there are bits of official printed lore all through this grand theory. The bit about the Mikado's horn being able to contain the shard of ultimate evil is of particular interest to many. The truth is, the crystal horn of the Mikado is the only known material that can restore the Rod of Lore from the Rod of Seven Parts campaign lore. Actually, to create the object that can contain Tharizdun's shard and the ruby rod of Asmodeus is much more difficult. Within each mature stellar dragon is a perfect diamond of concordance, which is vital to their metabolism of knowledge and truth. If enough are extracted, a process fatal to the dragon, they can be crafted into a cage of concordance, an artifact capable of safely containing the shard of ultimate evil that is responsible for the spread of the abyss. If both the shard and the ruby rod of Asmodeus are placed inside the cage of concordance, the layers of the abyss will not only splinter apart as the planar boundaries snap back into place, but further demonic corruption of planes that contain divine beings will no longer be possible, effectively halting the growth of the abyss forever. How this cage of the concordance is made, I don't know. Probably involves the Corporation of Immortals. And with that, I will leave the cosmic horror theme for a while and move on to more mundane creatures and lore from the world of Tyrell and the dusty tomes in the library of Candlekeep. As always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.